Hey, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Publish and Prosper,
Where publishing, technology, and marketing collide. Oh, it's your intro. I was about to start talking.
I mean, you can if you want to.
That's okay. Go.
You're not going to like my intro.
Oh, God. Why? Does it have something to do with Taylor Swift
Sure
again?
does.
Come on. How is that possible? How in the world would you tie Taylor Swift to this topic?
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Publish and Prosper, where I am not going to be breaking any news because this episode comes out a full 2 weeks after the fact. But since we just did an episode where we talked about Taylor Swift and marketing strategies, and that episode was specifically a birthday pass for me, I am sorry to tell you, Matt, that Taylor Swift herself has given me an even better birthday present because she got married on my birthday.
Well, I hope the other one is that she's going to give you a job.
I'm sure she would hire me. We're practically best friends. We were born in the same year, and now her wedding anniversary is my birthday. I'm pretty sure we're linked by an invisible string for the rest of time.
I don't like that. First of all, you need to match my energy level. Second of all, I've had enough Taylor Swift for the next 6 months, please.
That's fine. That's it, and that's all.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm done. You want to talk about Disney instead?
Yeah, actually, I do.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Because I also just got back from Disney.
Yep, totally fine.
And it was fantastic.
That's the real headline here, not the Taylor Swift wedding on the same day as your birthday.
Well, Disney was great.
Did you get rained on?
I actually, despite the fact that it did rain every day,
right,
was very successful. Because
it's summer in Florida.
Yes. Yeah. And, it reached a certain point during the day where, it was a relief when it rained because it was so hot and so humid every day. The kind of stagnant, humid air where even having a fan doesn't do anything because you're just circulating the same hot air. And it was rough. But I am enough of a pro that I managed to navigate us towards shelter within the window of time that we needed every single time. And there was maybe one 10-minute window where we needed some rain gear to get from one section of the park to the next in order to take that shelter. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I'd say
are you
pretty successful.
A poncho or umbrella girly at Disney?
It depends. If it's something that looks like, I always have both in my backpack.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
And so do you carry full size backpack with you?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I always have a really small umbrella, really small collapsible umbrella and a poncho. They live permanently. This is specifically my Disney umbrella.
Yeah.
They live in my park backpack specifically. But if it's a short burst, I can just tell it's 20-minute rainstorm and then it's going to go away, I prefer an umbrella. If it's something that I'm okay, we're battening down the hatches, it's going to be raining the rest of the day, and I'm not losing a park day over this, then I will rain gear up and say, all right, let's go.
I don't like umbrellas. I feel like umbrellas and strollers are the worst when you're navigating crowds.
Yes.
I don't do full backpack, though.
I would be shocked if you did.
I've thought about it many times, and I'm sure, once or twice when I have my kids with me, I've probably done it, but I prefer just a crossbody.
Yeah.
And then the most recent D23 package.
Oh, yeah.
Had a really nice, larger crossbody. Mm-hmm. It's Fantasia Mickey on it. And that's plenty of room for poncho and umbrella and water bottles and souvenirs and stuff, but not be a full backpack. This
is legitimately, first of all, this is something that I could talk about for 3 hours straight. I am perpetually on the hunt for a park bag that I like. I have one that I've been using for years that I really like, that is still the one to beat. But there are definitely still things that I would change about it. So I'm like always on the hunt for like, what is the perfect park bag kind of thing. And like, this is something that I've given this more thought than the passport that I've been working on for a year. It's been over a year now because it was supposed to be for my birthday trip last year. So it's officially been over a year. And I've spent significantly more time on park bag packing, park essentials, rain gear, stuff like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I could talk about this for 3 hours too. But
one day you will. One day I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are we going to talk about today?
Today, what we are actually talking about is we are looking at some of the top / best / most popular e-commerce platforms in the market today. Obviously, we cannot tell the future. So if you're listening to this episode 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, maybe there's a new top player in the game, or maybe one of these has really fallen through.
Yeah.
But for right now, where we are right now in the landscape that we spend a lot of time in, this is what it looks like right now. This is what is available to you and what we consider to be some of the best options out there.
Yeah, I think this is important and relevant because I think we're finally at a place, an inflection point, if you will, where, direct sales has now become, part of the conversation always.
Yes.
So when you're talking about, whether it's at the one end of the spectrum with indie authors and, you're in the middle of the spectrum with just, straight up content creators and creators in general, or the complete opposite end of the spectrum where you're talking about businesses and brands, or even if you want to throw publishers in there, like direct sales is now part of the conversation, which means e-commerce platforms are now a thing. It's something you have to think about in your stack of stuff that you're doing. So gone are the days where we were some of the lone people beating that drum and getting laughed at. Now it is the thing. So we thought we would do this episode and really talk about all of the major e-commerce platforms that exist and give you a little bit of color behind them, the pros and cons, what to expect. And hopefully you'll be able to come away from this episode with a pretty good idea of the one you would like to use if you're not already using one, or at least narrowed it down to, two choices that you can go out and research a little bit further. But at this point, if you've listened to any of our episodes and you're not selling direct yet, I would be surprised. But if you're not, this is a good episode for you. If you are, this is still very informational in the sense that it gives you an idea of what the other options are out there in case you ever decide you're disenchanted with the one you're using now, right?
Which does often happen.
Yeah.
For some reason or another.
Oh, but lots of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been a staunch Shopify supporter. I've used Shopify and still use Shopify for a number of different things that I do on the side. But I will tell you that probably at least once every other month, Shopify does something where I'm like, I hate you guys. Like, who else is out there that I can use? And, for me, I still always fall back to Shopify. They're, for what I use it for, still kind of the best fit. But again, yeah, there's any number of reasons where one of these platforms could fall out of favor with you. They're constantly making changes to their pricing, to the technology, to, some of the rules that surround how you add products. I mean, you name it. There's any number of things. And it only takes one of those to inconvenience you, and you have to go and change completely the way you're doing things. So, yeah, I mean, they're a fickle beast for sure. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think that is actually a really good point. And maybe this is the connection to our intro there, is that I think that you and I are both people that like to find something that we like, we support, we're comfortable with, whatever it is, and we stick to that until given a firm reason not to. We're
Sure.
both brand loyalists in a lot of ways, whether it comes to clothing or vacation locations, or I was just saying with my park backpack, I have my one that I love. I've had it for, I think I got it in 2021. So 6 years I've been using this bag now, and it is still my go-to, but every now and then, is that math? Is that how math works? Yeah, it has been 5 years. Anyway, yeah, close enough. It's fine. But it's okay. I've already started rounding up to 2027. It's okay.
Oh.
I know. But, you know, I do still every now and then like go out there and say, is there a better option here for me? Maybe I should try this bag instead. I see people talking about this a lot. Maybe I should try this one instead. And then still wind up going back to my OG.
Yeah.
So even if you are somebody who's like, I'm very comfortable with my current e-commerce platform, it's good to know what else is out there. It's good to know what the other features are. Even if all it does is just reaffirm your choice, still good to know. And still good to have a well-rounded understanding of not just what you can do with these platforms or what you like or don't like about them, but also what other people are saying, which I think is actually my segue into just talking a little bit about how I gathered some of this information. This is not a single source in any way. I did not just Google like what are the top e-commerce platforms out there right now and take one person's or one outlet's word as gospel. So I spent like an hour trying to figure out that word earlier, and it just came out of nowhere. I couldn't remember the word for when you take
what word?
Aggregated.
Oh.
Sorry.
I thought you were referring to gospel.
No.
What do you mean you spent an hour trying to figure out that? You mean you were trying to recall the word you wanted to use and couldn't bring?
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't put my finger on what the word was.
Was this an hour on the clock? Were you
No, I was
trying to figure out what word you
I was working on the outline, and I literally had like a what I do when I'm writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction writing, if I can't think of, like whether I don't have a name for that character yet or I can't think of the word, I'll just put brackets and what I was looking for there, and then I'll come back to it later. And I had that where it was like in the back, it was like percolating in the back of my mind for like an hour, and I never figured it out, and it just came out of my mouth organically. Sure, of course it did.
Do you write in Google Docs or do you write in Word?
I write in Google Docs.
You should just use comments instead of brackets.
I should, but I don't like that the comments then push the page off center on the screen.
Well, you can hide them, but what I found the benefit to comments was I was doing brackets too and had been doing that since college, to be honest with you. But with the brackets, I have to go through and manually find everywhere where I had brackets, and they would be everywhere. With the comments, you literally just go through and it lines up every comment for you, and you're just going to each one and boom, 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 and knocking them out. And you can hide the comments on the right-hand side, because that drives me crazy too, when now my page is pushed left because I have comments over here. So I keep those hidden until it's time for me to go through and go, okay, now I need to go back through. And all those areas where I was missing like a word or a name, or I wanted to mask something with, not using the real name or whatever that might be. And I just check off the comment and it's done. It's gone forever. Yeah.
I'm going to try that next time.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Who would have guessed that you were going to get writing tips and strategies?
It was not on my bingo card today. Yeah.
In this episode.
Yeah. That's all right.
Anyway, I aggregated this list that we're going to talk through here from kind of 5.5 different sources, 5 main sources. I used several different generative AI tools, and then 2 different articles that I will have linked in the show notes if you want to go check them out. And then I scrolled through some Reddit threads kind of unofficially.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So let's get into it.
Yes, please.
All right. 20 minutes in, let's start talking about this.
All right. So it gave you a pretty lengthy list. We're actually going to narrow this down. We're going to talk about pretty much the top 5. We'll touch on the others real quick and tell you why we're not going to talk about them. But it gave you some of the ones you would expect. So in the top 5, you have Shopify, WooCommerce, Wix, Squarespace, and BigCommerce. Those are, by all definitions, I don't care who you poll, probably the top 5 most widely used e-commerce platforms on the internet right now.
Yes.
Now, we're going to go into those a little more in depth. The others that it gave you that we're not really going to touch on, because quite frankly, they're either not that great, because I've tried a few of them, or they're more of an enterprise level product where, I think most of our listeners would not benefit from these. and those are Adobe Commerce. Adobe Commerce is a very large and somewhat unwieldy platform, but it's also very much tied to all other Adobe products. So it is relegated in that world of enterprise a little more so than it is, for an independent creator or somebody like that. ECWID or Equid, however you want to say it, not the easiest platform in the world to work with, not as well known. Move forward at your own risk with that one. Square Online, not even going to waste breath. Shift for Shop, that's Shift for Shop.
I'm really glad you repeated that.
I realized I said that fast, and somebody's probably like, wait, what did he just say? Again, not that great. And then this one is so annoying. I don't know why, but so many authors use this one. And it's, in the grand scheme of things, not a great platform, but whatever. And it's PayHip. Now, I think the reason why a lot of authors still use it is because it has been around for a while. And it's morphed into, lots of different variations of an e-commerce platform over the years. But again, it's 2026. The technology has far surpassed what PayHip actually does. Again, that's my opinion. It's the opinion of a lot of other people online. So again, buyer beware, use it at your own risk. If you're already using it and you love it, great, whatever. Don't at me because I don't care. But I don't think it's that great of a platform. So we'll move forward with those 5 that we identified as, again, basically the big 5, if you will. There's other types of e-commerce platforms that we're not going to talk about right now. Some of them are more in the range of marketplaces, and you can get into things like, are you going to talk about Etsy? No. There are platforms like Fourth Wall and Gumroad. They're kind of a hybrid of marketplace and e-commerce platform. You can go to Fourth Wall. You can set up a product. Most of what you sell on Fourth Wall has to run through their POD providers, but I do believe they have an inventory option where you can handle your own fulfillment. GoDaddy has their own version of doing e-commerce, but it is not easy. Yeah. It's not user intuitive at all.
I was honestly so confused when I saw that show up on one of those lists. I was like, really?
Not great. Big Cartel is another one. It's more of a true e-commerce platform. It's been around for a while. They really need to do some updates though. It's pretty out of date. So but those are some of the other ones.
Yeah, I just think it's important to recognize that there are, this is a representative sampling, but there are so many options out there. Just because we didn't mention them doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah.
But these are the most reliable, maybe.
No, that's exactly right. What I was going to say is there's a reason why the top 5 are the top 5.
Yes.
There's a reason why those 5 have grown at the rate that they've grown over the last 3 to 5 years, like exponentially. And there's a reason why more people use them than the rest of these smaller ones.
Yes.
It is reliability. It is security. It is things like that are very important. Oftentimes, we see people just go for the cheapest option or what they think is the easiest option. And within days, weeks, months, they hate their life. Or worse, something bad happens, right? So I get it. Lots of times you want to buck the system and not go with big name brands or things like that. But, when you're dealing with money and people's personal information via transactional credit card things, you really need to think about who you're going to use, who you're going to trust with that information, and just trust with your business in general. And yeah, sometimes it might cost you a few pennies more per transaction or, $5 extra per month than some other plan. But sometimes peace of mind and security is worth it.
This is one of those things that this is kind of like a cornerstone foundation of your whole brand, which is not to say that
if you're selling direct, yeah.
Yes. Which is not to say that you can't ever change. Absolutely you can choose to move from one platform to the next. And it's not easy, but you can. It's okay to do that. But you do want to be thoughtful and conscientious about not just where you build your platform, on what platform you build your platform, I guess, but also recognizing that that this is more than just deciding like, oh, do I want to pay the premium for the highest end thing, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Your reputation is attached to this too. And if your customers ever have any kind of issue where they feel insecure about your e-commerce solution because you cheaped out and chose a less reputable or a less reliable one, that's irreparable damage to your brand. That has nothing to do with your workflow or your automations or anything like that, and is actually just damaging your brand itself.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that's worth doing the research and worth spending the money on.
Yeah. No notes. 100%.
Love that. Not just because you want to move on.
Well, that too, yeah. We'll start with the biggest one.
Yes.
The one most people know and talk about, and that's Shopify.
Ranked number one on every single resource that I looked at, including unofficially on Reddit. It was the one most recommended, the one that had the most upvotes every time somebody commented it.
I look at Shopify, again, I'm a Shopify user, but just in general, when we talk to people who have used it or use it, or, sometimes it's referred to as the lesser of the evils, or, the devil, however you want to look at it. But Shopify is the largest. They're the largest for a reason. And we're going to go through the pros and cons of each of these, and we're going to start with Shopify. But Shopify is verifiably the largest one right now.
I mean, the lesser of all evils. This is capitalism.
It's like
evil.
It's like Delta, right?
Right.
Well, I don't think capitalism's evil, by the way.
No, but
we differ
the
on
companies
that.
that are...
it's like
anyway.
Delta. Like,
Yes.
everybody says, why do you always fly Delta? It's the lesser of all the evils. It's the devil I know. Like,
Agreed. Absolutely.
This is how I view Shopify. It has its advantages, for sure. Going with the largest provider of something has its advantages. It also has its disadvantages. So, from the top, its advantages are it's pretty easy to use. Mm-hmm. Like, regardless of your skill level, Shopify is fairly easy to use. Very few of these platforms have an interface where it's basically 2 or 3 clicks and you're done. But Shopify is probably the closest to it. Like, you literally can pick a theme. You can pick a free theme. You don't have to pick a paid one. Once you sign up for the account, pick a theme and literally give it a few pieces of information, and your site is almost pretty much built for you. And then you're just going to plug in the product which we're going to assume is a book. They have a ton of apps. So, again, you need things like, help with taxes or some of these. They have an app for everything in their ecosystem. Their app store is great, by the way, for the most part. You can find so much stuff in there. Everything's rated. It's just a really good ecosystem for people who don't want to spend time doing a lot of the work themselves. And they're like me. They'd rather just plug in an app for that and plug in an app for that. Plug in something there for email, plug in something here for social media, and just let it go, right? Like automating things. It's great for if you happen to get lucky enough to scale from selling 3 books a month to 3,000 books a month. There's no effect whatsoever, negative effect on the system. It's completely scalable and automated. They have a great selection of help resources. I've had to try and contact them once. That was not so easy, but I did eventually get through to somebody. But most other times, if there's something I'm trying to figure it out, their documentation, their knowledge base, their articles, it's pretty easy.
I have used Shopify as a research and education resource for pretty much the whole time that I've worked at Lulu. Whether it was when I was doing social media content and looking for stuff to share on social media, or doing research for various podcast episodes we've done. Mm-hmm. And consistently a very useful, accessible. It's never been something that I've been like, oh my God, I don't even know what they're talking about here. I usually feel like it answers the question that I need to by the end of it. So yes, absolutely great for that.
Now, the drawbacks to Shopify.
Yes.
The number one drawback, the one that most people cite, is the cost. Yeah. So all of these platforms, or most of them, will have a monthly cost. Shopify tends to be on the higher end of the scale. Their base plan starts at $39 a month. Mm-hmm. For some people, that's a deal breaker. I think it just depends on who you are, how you value your time, what your budget is. But for that $39 a month, you get quite a bit, but it does start to add up. So all those apps I said that I like to plug in, some are free, some are not. Some also cost an additional amount of money per month to use them, or there's a usage fee. You might use an app to deliver audiobooks, and every time you deliver an audiobook to a customer, there's a download fee or things like that. So those fees start to add up. You could very easily go from a $39 a month plan to having a monthly bill that you're paying to maintain your e-commerce storefront through Shopify and the associated apps with it, $50, $75, $100, $200.
Yeah, easily.
But they also have plans that go as high as a couple $100s a month, depending on what you need and how much you're using it. So cost is the number one reason cited by people who don't use Shopify, or Shopify users when polled, what are your biggest complaints about Shopify? It's usually the cost.
Yeah.
So,
and there are different ways to look at that too. I was looking at this yesterday. It is $39 a month, but it is slightly less if you are billed annually and not monthly. Well, yeah. And this is for the basic plan. Obviously, it increases as you tier up with their different style of plans, but it's $29 a month if you bill it annually and not monthly.
That's a good point. What I will say is they build in some extra incentives for you to pay yearly instead of monthly. One is obviously you save some money, but the other is shipping is a nightmare sometimes when you're dealing with e-commerce, right? Especially if you sell outside of the U.S. You're an international seller. So, mapping, shipping providers and regions and costs, it can be a nightmare.
Yeah.
They have what's called live shipping rates, but you can only access those. You can only use, or get access to that feature if you're on one of the higher plans, like the, $100 a month or whatever, or if you pay annually. So if you pick the lowest plan, but you pay it annually, not only do you save $10 a month, but you get access to live shipping rates, which makes your shipping setup a breeze. And so if you're doing that, that's a pro move. And so if you're paying $29 a month because you paid annually and you're getting access to live shipping rates, you are way ahead of the game already. So if you can afford it, if your budget allows for it, and you can pay annually, you get a bunch of extra features built in for paying annually, which I think is really cool.
I mean, personally, I'm always going to argue in favor of paying annually. If it's something that you're going to be using,
well, yeah,
and you have the upfront money to cover that, I think that's always just my personal preference. But I also think that while I completely agree that it's very easy to go a little overboard with the apps that you install to make this whole workflow a lot easier for you, and then all of a sudden you're paying $100 a month just on the apps and all that supporting stuff alone. Mm-hmm. In the same way that we've talked about, in the last episode, we talked about offset versus digital printing and understanding the difference between maybe the price per unit or the cost per unit for offset is lower than digital, but when you also factor in all the budget that you have to spend on warehousing and storing that inventory and fulfillment and packaging and all that kind of stuff, it might actually wind up breaking closer to even than you think it does on the cost per unit. Maybe you decide that you don't want to spend the extra expense on all of these different app solutions that are in Shopify, but you wind up creating a tech stack for yourself that's bits and pieces from all over the place that winds up still costing that same amount, and it doesn't exist in the ecosystem that you're in the first place. Yeah. Or are you actually saving that money at all in the long run and possibly wasting even more time on top of the additional money?
Some people would still see that as a disadvantage. One of the other things that is considered a disadvantage of Shopify is that everything is within the Shopify ecosystem. Yes. So if you're somebody that likes to have total control over your website presence, over the things you're doing, over hosting your files, over, Shopify might not be the best solution for you because everything is in the Shopify ecosystem. So yes, you kind of own your site and everything, but there's still a single point of failure there. If, let's just say, Shopify goes down for whatever reason or something like that happens, or who knows, everything is there in Shopify's platform and their ecosystem. So there is there is a choke point there potentially. Now, I've not seen that happen, but it does happen. Google's gone out for half a day and half the world was like, whoa, what's going on? Yeah. So it's always something to think about. But, I think that the two biggest disadvantages to Shopify would be cost. That just adds up very quickly. And again, the fact that everything is within the Shopify ecosystem. So if you're somebody who doesn't like that, single point of failure system, or just likes to have more control over things like hosting their site, hosting their files, stuff like that, Shopify may not be the best bet for you.
I think a lot of the things that we're going to talk about and that we have already talked about in this episode are they can be equally advantages or disadvantages depending on your personal preference.
Yeah.
So this is something, we're presenting it as factually as possible, because some of these things you might just be like, that's not a disadvantage to me. I'm fine with that. I prefer all my things to exist within the same ecosphere. I think I just mashed two words together.
You did, but it's
whatever.
Okay.
It's fine.
It works.
It does work. For some people they prefer that, and other people that would be a deterrent for them. Mm-hmm. So, take everything with, just because we're identifying something as an advantage or a disadvantage doesn't mean you have to view it that way.
Yeah. The last thing on Shopify I will say is that Shopify is best for people who are beginners, I think. So if you are a beginner, if this is your first foray into direct sales or e-commerce or building a website or doing whatever, Shopify probably is your best bet as long as you have the budget. I think that's probably the best one for you to go with. The next one is kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, I think. It's WooCommerce. But what we have to mention here, what we should point out, is WooCommerce is actually just a plugin that sits on top of WordPress. Mm-hmm. So unlike Shopify, where everything is Shopify, it's the Shopify platform, it's Shopify plugins, you're building in Shopify, it's hosted by Shopify, everything is there, nice and tidy, right? Good or bad. WooCommerce is nothing more than an actual plugin, an e-commerce plugin that sits on top of your WordPress site. Mm-hmm. So if you're already a WordPress user, which I think something like almost 40% of the world operates on WordPress, or did, they had a huge, it doesn't matter. Anyways, there was like a whole it's old tea. There was like some weird fallout within the WordPress leadership ranks and business unit. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyways, I've always found WordPress to be somewhat complicated and aggravating. So I've never really stuck with WordPress. But some people absolutely love WordPress. Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely love it, because you have full creative control, because you choose where you want to host your site, who hosts it, how you host it, the files, all of that stuff. It gives you full control. So I can see why a lot of people like it. But there's a massive learning curve there.
My understanding has always kind of been that if you already are a WordPress user, mm-hmm. WooCommerce is the ultimate solution for you if you are trying to add e-commerce into your existing WordPress. But if you are building a site from scratch, this is probably not the direction that you want to go in.
No, not unless, again, you're somebody who already has experience building sites and you want all that control. I mean, the learning curve on WordPress is steep. It's not for the beginner or faint of heart. But yes, WooCommerce is the ultimate plugin for you if you have a It's probably one of the only or best solutions for e-commerce if you've got a WordPress site and you want to keep everything, native there. Again, it's extremely flexible in terms of what you can do. Like WordPress, WooCommerce offers you a lot of flexibility there. You're still within the WordPress ecosystem, so WordPress has its own other apps and things available. WooCommerce is just another one of those apps. I think personally, WooCommerce is a tough one. WordPress is a tough one, I should say. If you're just starting out, if you're an indie creator with just a couple of titles, there's just a lot of work that goes into it. So I would think very carefully about whether or not you're going to move forward with WordPress and WooCommerce. It has its advantages, that creative, flexible sort of environment where you can do whatever you want. WordPress has been around for a long time. So they've got quite a bit of SEO built up in terms of their platform and the way that they're able to make sure that, discoverability stays at the forefront of what they're doing. But yeah, that's a tough one.
Please correct me if I'm wrong about this,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm pretty sure that WooCommerce and WordPress are open source, so they are free to use in a way that could be misleading because
Yes,
they are free to use, but there are just other not hidden costs, but there are other costs in there. You are still responsible for paying for hosting your own platform and paying for all the tools and plugins that you would need to that might already be built into something like Shopify. So I think it can be an attractive option for people because they see free to use and think, oh, wait, I can save some money in my budget here.
Yeah.
And then you don't realize that there are a lot of tangentially related or hidden fees or something like that you are still going to be responsible for paying for. It's just not technically being billed by WordPress.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a lot of them, but there's definitely, fees and things that up front you might not realize you're going to have to shoulder. And it can be confusing, right? Like figuring out, because you have a lot of options of where to host and how to host your WordPress site. You can actually host it with WordPress. I think it's called like WP Engine or something like that. Or actually that was part of the internal falling out that was happening. So it's, I don't know if they've figured all that out, but WordPress was a little bit of a mess there for a little while, I think last year. Anyways, yes, you're absolutely right. It looks completely free on the outside if you're looking in, because again, a lot of it's open source or, but when you get down to it, there will be monthly fees or yearly fees for hosting and a number of other things, by the way. So it's not completely free at all. You're 100% right about that. And again, if you want complete freedom, creative control, things like that, it's a good option. But these days, if you just want something easy, fairly quick, you don't want to have to spend a lot of time learning how to build certain components or dealing with these things. You don't want to deal with figuring out how you're going to host it, who's going to host it, where you're going to host it, what those fees are going to be. It's not a great option. But it's still one of the largest ways that people build and or host content and sell content. So we had to talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Wix.
Okay.
Wix is a lot like Shopify. It's another sort of kind of drag and drop, easy builder type of tool. Wix was kind of garbage back in the day. Like there were very few site builder tools that existed, but Wix was one of them. And I feel like they were kind of at the bottom of the ladder there. But the joke's on everybody else, including me, because Wix is one of the few that survived that era. And they've been able to transform into, something very similar to Shopify. So Wix places a little more resources and effort into being a full website builder solution, not just e-commerce. Like Shopify is really focused on e-commerce. Like you can build a nice, robust website with Shopify. It takes a little longer, but they're really focused on e-commerce, right? Whereas Wix is a pretty healthy balance of like, yes, you can build a really nice, just straight up website, but you can also build in a really cool sort of e-commerce storefront component. So it is easy to use though. It's like Shopify. If you're a beginner, it's a lot of just drag and drop, or I want this, or choose a different font or a different color, but you can spin up a Wix website and storefront very quickly, just like Shopify.
I actually saw them do a presentation at a conference one time that they literally spun up a website live on stage.
If you've ever done something like that, like, again, an online website building tool or something like that, you could hop into something like Wix or Shopify and very quickly spin up a website.
Sure.
And then spend a few more hours making it like a top-notch site. But you could spin up a basic site literally in 20, 30 minutes and be published on the web, ready to do whatever you want to do, right? But again, Wix is really good for that balance. Like if you're just trying to build yourself a nice author platform and you really want to focus on that first, like your brand, who you are as an author, maybe you've got multiple titles, it's a really good option. Now, again, they're not as focused on e-commerce as Shopify is, but they've got really good e-commerce tools. I think that if you're looking to have just a nice balanced approach in perpetuity, Wix is great. If you think you're going to sell more and more, you're going to keep publishing or writing books or creating content, and you really want your presence to be more e-commerce, more direct sales focused, Shopify might still be the better bet, but Wix is a great option. Their pricing is fairly similar, if not almost identical to Shopify, although some of the plans can be a little bit cheaper. And then they have some plugins and things too that will help with things like tax collection and stuff like that. So I think Wix and Shopify are probably the two easiest to use for beginners, most widely used. And again, Shopify just focuses more on e-commerce and direct sales. Wix really tries to present more of a balanced approach to an actual website with multiple pages. Maybe you want a blog built in. I'll tell you, that's one thing that kind of sucks with Shopify.
Yeah.
Trying to add a blog to your site, it's almost impossible. Like, my website sucks for that. Like, there's literally like an about me page and then like, my book. But I tried to build out a blog and it was just like, it was a nightmare. So a lot easier on Wix, right? So think about that. Like, what are you going to use your website for besides just selling books?
I was actually on a website recently that I'm not like 100% confident, but I'm pretty sure is a storefront that's powered by Shopify. And they used to have a blog attached to their website and they don't anymore. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, or oftentimes you link off to a different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I actually think you're right. I think even back then when they did have the blog attached to it, it was a third party, and then they just kind of gave that up because it was, not integrated well with the rest of the website.
I think that was an afterthought for Shopify. They were like, yeah, we need to have this here, but it's like,
yeah,
I just don't think they put any thought into it because it is not user friendly at all.
Which is unusual for them, but
well, it's unfortunate too because that's where a lot of people get a lot of their discoverability from,
yes.
Right? So maybe Shopify will work that out one day.
Maybe. I do think that one of the things that was interesting with Wix and Shopify actually was one of the sources that I used for this, that again, I will have this linked in the show notes, was actually an article from Shopify. Mm-hmm. Shopify loves a good listicle. And they had a list of the 11 best e-commerce platforms in market today.
Let me guess what number one was.
I bet you can't.
It's got to be Shopify.
Oh my gosh. Yep. You
Gold
were
star
right.
for me.
But what do you think number 2 was?
I'm going to guess it's Wix since that's what we're talking about. But I will say this, and you're right, they absolutely love a listicle. Like, Shopify puts out so much content, like blog content.
Yeah.
It's almost all in list form.
Always. And it's very rarely 10. They very often do 9 or 11. And I'm like, what's wrong with a nice even 10?
I don't know. I like even numbers too, but.
Yeah. But I did think that it was very telling that they put Wix as number 2. Because obviously this is a list that is compiled with some bias, even if they're presenting it as an unbiased.
It looks like bias, but think about it. Like every other bit of research you do outside of Shopify, people still list Shopify as number 1.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, there's obviously some inherent bias, but at the end of the day, they are actually number 1.
Yes.
So it's just because it's coming from them, it feels a little bit more cringy. But, what I was going to say is you're right in terms of the content and always doing listicles. But what I've found is they are actually fairly objective about their competitors when they are doing content that involves their competitors. And I don't see a lot of other people doing that. So, hats off to them for that, at least.
I completely agree with that. And I think that that's very relevant, that because they are very often a brand that is as objective as they can be, and do not, like, they don't shy away from their competitors. WooCommerce was on there too. Multiple other, like, there were definitely different competitors of theirs on that list. And I think that it's very telling that they put Wix at number 2.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about how these two kind of measure up against each other.
Yeah. So just like the other two, we'll tell you that we feel Wix, in my opinion, it's best again for beginners, first timers. But I think Wix is also really good for nonfiction creators. People who really do want to build out a broader website presence, have more pages, maybe a blog, some other stuff like that. Having that ability to do it in a fashion that is much easier than on Shopify, I think is what puts Wix a little bit ahead. And I think that's what it makes it best for nonfiction creators, beginners, even small businesses, things like that. Okay, Squarespace.
Yes.
Squarespace is the one that everybody either loves or hates. And then a lot of people love to hate it.
I have to ask this question all the time, so maybe you can answer it for me just in case any of our listeners are thinking it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Squarespace and Square.
Mm-hmm.
Two different platforms?
Yes.
Insane.
Yeah.
So to be clear right now, we are talking about Squarespace, which is not the one that has the physical card reader that you see when you go out shopping these
That's
days.
just Square.
That's Square.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. One day I'll get it right.
It doesn't matter. You don't need to get it right.
That's fair.
Honestly. Squarespace has been around for a while. It's got a really good site building tool. It's really good for people who do things that are going to be very image heavy, portfolio based. It's used by a lot of small businesses, especially those that, again, need to be able to include a lot of photos or imagery and things like that. I personally wouldn't, if I'm talking to an author or creator and we're talking about stuff, I personally would not recommend Squarespace necessarily for the purpose of selling books, especially if you're new or a beginner. But you can build a really nice website on Squarespace. If for some reason you're already using it or you're just inclined to use it, I mean, you're going to build a nice looking site, especially if you know what you're doing or you take the time to learn their tool set.
It's just not really as focused on e-commerce.
They have e-commerce, obviously. It's not a huge focus. Again, I think when they set out to build Squarespace, to build that platform, they were really trying to build something that was also holistic and all-encompassing, kind of like Wix. But Squarespace is a little more complicated. It's fairly easy to use, but still a little more complicated than Wix or Shopify. But their templates and their template database are really nice. Again, if you need a presence that is very much image-driven or imagery-driven, I should say, if you're going to have a lot of photos or a portfolio of things, or, maybe you're not an author or a creator necessarily in the sense, but maybe you're a designer, a cover designer, things like that, and you really need to have a site where you can showcase your work or, whatever it is, right? Maybe you are a book creator, but you sell photo books or, coffee table style art books or things like that. Squarespace is a pretty decent option just because of how robust that platform is in terms of that type of template, that type of setup. But yeah, you're right. It's not focused on e-commerce, and they have less features in their e-commerce part of the business. Because they're not focused on e-commerce, you may find it a little harder to navigate things like tax collection, shipping. It's not quite as easy or intuitive as a Wix or a Shopify. And then if you wanted to create a storefront that had any level of complexity to it, or just something beyond like buy now, it's in the cart and you're done. Like if you really wanted to build out a cool shopping experience, which a lot of authors and creators do, and I think that's really cool, Squarespace is not the one to do it with. Yeah.
We also don't have a Lulu Direct plugin, if that's something that you're looking for.
We don't. That's a good point that you bring up. So the first three we talked about, there's Lulu Direct plugins for all three of those, so it's very easy to just plug and play. It's virtually no work involved. Squarespace we did not do a plugin for Squarespace for a number of reasons. Now, if you're a Squarespace user and you want to use Lulu, you still can. Mm-hmm. You could use Zapier and create a Zap. That would work. You could also use Claude and create an MCP where you can connect your Lulu account and your projects to your Squarespace website, your storefront, and make sure that any orders that come through for those books go right through the Lulu API and they're printed and shipped. These days with Claude and MCPs and being able to create Zaps, I don't think we'll create any more native plugins. I think because this stuff exists now, we don't need to. But yeah, there is no Lulu plugin for Squarespace. You're right.
Yeah, there are a lot of solutions out there that are unofficial solutions.
Sure.
Just because we do not have an official plugin for it does not mean that it's not possible for you to connect your Lulu account and various different sites and sources and platforms and subscription tools and stuff like that out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't let that necessarily deter you from using something if it's a super attractive option and suits your needs.
Yeah.
There's still a way to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. This last one that we'll touch on, there's also not a Lulu plugin for it. So
Right.
We'll just go ahead and get that one out of the way.
Yep.
I almost didn't want to include this one because of how many larger scale businesses use it. But I do think it's a good one to talk about because if you're someone who really wants to make sure you're getting a lot for your money, from what I've heard and been told and seen, BigCommerce, which is the fifth one, they pack a lot of stuff into each of their plans. So on some of these other platforms, you might have to use an app or a plugin for tax collection or I don't know, some other facet of what you're doing, right? Or to create bundles, you might have to use a plugin on Shopify. There's a lot of that stuff that's just naturally built in to BigCommerce. It was created, as in the name, specifically for stores and brands and businesses that had pretty healthy catalogs or product catalogs, portfolios. There's a lot of stuff built in for people who are selling at scale. It's a great tool if you're already somebody who's selling a lot of books and you're looking for a direct sales a platform. But it's also a little bit tough to manage. It's built like an enterprise tool. Yeah. So it's not going to give you that super sort of easy drag and drop sort of feel. Like you're going to have to do a little bit of homework to build a really nice storefront using BigCommerce. But again, if you're someone who's already doing volume or anticipating doing a lot of volume or has a catalog of 150 titles or more, something like that, maybe you're a medium-sized publisher, small publisher, whatever that might be, BigCommerce is a really good option. But yeah, I think if you're at the smaller end of that spectrum in terms of a beginner, maybe you've only got one or two titles, something like that, BigCommerce is not for you yet.
I think that yet is a really important qualifier in there because that is why it made the cut ultimately to be included in this, is that this is something that you can absolutely grow into and absolutely something that could be a really great long-term solution.
Yeah.
Or it could be a solution for somebody who is saying, I am an established author or I have an established brand. I've got this proof of concept already. I'm not experimenting with this. I've been selling direct for several years now, and I'm looking to make a change to a new platform because I want more features, more capability, more scalability, stuff like that. This is not the entry-level one, but that doesn't mean that it's not a good option for people that are in this space, that are looking for something a little more robust than those beginner entry-level platforms.
Yeah, if I was going to grow or scale into a different platform outside of Shopify, one that could handle more volume, offer me more for my money, better transaction fees, all those things, when you're dealing with high volumes, BigCommerce would be the one that I rolled into. It wouldn't be Adobe or one of those others. It would be BigCommerce for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, a few more that we didn't talk about yet, but we just wanted to mention them. These are very specific to authors and books.
Yeah.
Or books, I should say, regardless of how you identify. But there's a couple that we just wanted to quickly mention. We're not going to go in depth. You can look them up for yourself. Bookspy or books.by is basically an e-commerce storefront tool platform specifically geared towards people who sell books, authors, creators, things like that. They're also the people that built and own Tableau, which is kind of a self-publishing site, so they kind of work hand in hand. There's another one called The Bookshelf, It's the bookshelf.io.
I will link all three of these in
Yep.
the show notes. So if you want to learn more about them, you can check them out, because some of them are, the URL is not super obvious what it is.
Yeah. The Bookshelf is brought to you by the people that did Atticus, the writing tool. So again, they're in the industry. They know. Now, I will say Bookshelf does not have the direct sales component ready yet. So it's a website builder right now for authors and booksellers. The direct sales component, I believe, is coming later this year. But nonetheless, it looks like it's a great platform, and we know the people behind that one. And then the other one we'll mention is called Storyteller OS. Also, URL is storytelleros.com, I think, or something like that. Storyteller is also one of those all-encompassing platforms. Will help you with direct sales, building a site. It'll help you with social media posting, all kinds of things. So again, very much geared towards authors, creators, people who are in the business of selling books. So those are three strong contenders if you want something that is easy to use and very much focused on authors, books, and not so much other stuff. Some people might find it nice to have a tool set that is specifically geared towards people who write books for a living or something like that. So yeah.
I'm always excited to see when people that are in the industry too are the ones that are building these kinds of tools.
Yes. Yeah.
Because somebody said, I'm looking for a solution that is going to best suit my needs. And right now there's nothing out there that really is specifically for me and solving the problems that I need solved.
Yeah.
And fine, I'll do it myself. And I always love to see that. So these are really cool. Check them out. We'll probably talk more about them in the future, and some other ones out there too.
Yeah. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, we talked about the top 5. We got Shopify, Wix, WooCommerce, Squarespace, and BigCommerce. If you're a beginner, Shopify is probably your best bet as long as you have the budget for it. If your budget is not Shopify friendly and you're a beginner, you can take your chances with WordPress and WooCommerce. Just be wary of the fees, and it is a steep learning curve. But if you're somebody who likes to learn new things, you want to learn to build your own website, and you want to learn about how all that works, WordPress is a good option for you. It is open source. There is a lot of free components to it. But again, just be conscious of that and keep an eye on those fees. If you've got a little experience in these things and you want something that's more well-rounded because you want to build a more robust website in general, maybe have a nice blog, but still have a storefront, Wix is a good option. And then if you're looking for scale, you really want to move the needle, and you're at that point where you're ready to sort of level up, BigCommerce is probably your best bet there.
Yeah.
So.
No notes.
Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. Maybe just, a reminder that even if it wasn't something that we mentioned in this episode, doesn't mean that it's not a viable option for you.
Sure.
Depending on what your goals are, what your business needs are. There are so many, more and more every day solutions out there, platforms out there. You don't have to settle for one just because it's the first one you come across. You also should not settle for one just because it's the cheapest one that you come across.
For sure.
Do your research. There's a bunch of stuff out there to help you if this is something that you're really trying to narrow down and pick a path. Go forth and do it, because there's a lot of really great options out there, and one of them is going to be the right fit for you.
Yep. All right. So do all the things, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review, send an email.
Podcast@lulu.com.
Let a pigeon free with a note strapped to its leg. Send smoke signals, whatever you want to do.
Smoke signals might not be super viable right
idea?
now. Well, I mean, it's not a bad idea. It's just been raining a lot.
Here.
So here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we might not see them.
All right. Scratch that one from the list. All right.
But, yeah.
Come back and listen next week.
Most important one.
Yep.
And until then, thanks for listening.
Later.
Publish and Prosper is brought to you by Lulu.com. To learn more, visit publishprosperpodcast.com. For more episodes like this one, be sure to like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in.